Undo with a smile and a laugh. Life is too short. Clouds, they're like your emotions. And when you feel down, you smile and laugh because you know they're going to pass over and be gone. Uns are those individuals that are going to try to undo you. They're those uns that love you and those that just want to take advantage of you. When you recognize an un, they lose their power. And what do? Smile and laugh. Dao. Daos are your oak trees. They're the individuals who help you. You help your Daos because you only have a few of them on your hand. And ultimately, you want to be there for them as they're there for you. And finally, do. Serve. Serve your community, serve your family, serve your planet. It is the do's that makes things happen. They are the doers. They define society, they define nations, they define the world that we live in. Try to be a do to others by serving your family, your community, and your planet. UnDaoDu. I'm UnDaoDu, here in the heartland of Zen, where I've lived for the last 19 years. And I want to talk to you about how Bitcoin will unravel fiat and become the global reserve currency. DAO, how DAOs will unravel Wall Street and replace the corporation with a smart DAO, an AI-driven DAO. And do, how a distributive unconsciousness, you can think of it as an AI, not a consciousness, but a distributive unconsciousness, is going to manage it all and make it happen by creating digital twins of individuals. So you will have a digital twin and it will pretty much know how you're going to act, because I'll tell you, as a descendant of a proto-ape, we're not really that complicated. UnDaoDu. So let's get going. We live on this planet, and it's a finite planet. This field here can only grow so much rice. No matter what I do and how I maximize it, it can only grow so much rice. And that goes for all the resources on our planet. However, we have a business model created, or I would say hatched in the 15th century in Florence, called mercantile capitalism, that ultimately thinks that this planet is infinite. It's built on this little bit of broken equation called CAGR, compounded annual growth rate. And this CAGR is what drives ROI, which is return on investment. You see, back then, they had to figure out a mechanism to get rich landlords who had all this land and access to all this money to potentially invest in their enterprise. Capitalism would go ahead and have its teenage years in England, driving colonialism and imperialism. It would create these massive trades. The sugar plantation trade, which would drive slavery. And ultimately, it would evolve into the steam engine that would drive iron production and child labor and so on, and coal and everything, right? Creating, in a way, this Ouroboros, this serpent, the head of the serpent becoming capitalism. And it started to consume its tail, which is the planet. It's been consuming this tail now for over 500 years. And it has reached its head. Its head being the descendants of the proto-ape itself, us. Because now it is launching autonomous agents to replace the very proto-apes that it needed to run things with an autonomous one. One that ultimately will work for free, doesn't need any benefits, won't bicker, and they can do what? Maximize profits. Over 400 billion was invested into AI this year alone by Silicon Valley. They have seen over $4.4 trillion in return. You see, capitalism is about creating new markets and profits. New markets and profits, right? Our new markets and profits. Consume. New markets and profits. And in doing so, they are out to disrupt everything because AI is allowing them to consume markets that were once held by us proto-apes, and they can go back through now and consume. The problem is that they're consuming their own head and they don't even know it. And ultimately, they're so oblivious to it that they're laughing all the way to the bank. They're not seeing the outcome because you see, capitalism isn't built for a purely autonomous driven planet. And as a result, it's going to collapse. But here's the good news. There is a new sandbox out there, one that I played a role in help bringing about, one built on the idea of this guy right here, okay? One built on Nakamoto's dream of this finite currency, Bitcoin. And one that is built on these ideas of DAOs. Now, when I shared the vision of the DAO, which I called Open Decentralized Corporations back in 2010, with the founders of Bitcoin Magazine, I left out one important component, that they were supposed to be driven by AI. And the other thing is back then, I didn't understand what would be, I knew that little bit of equation needed to be replaced, but I didn't know what that equation would be. I would need GPT-4 to develop that equation. The equation ultimately becomes replaced by something known as collective autonomous benefit rate. By measuring the intangible benefits that this production has on the planet and on its living systems and in sharing with others, it has a value, the CABR value. And CABR ultimately is going to be a measure on all things. I'll go into a grocery store and I will be able to see the CABR score on every product in there with my Eduit glasses. I will be able to ultimately make a choice on my buying power by the CABR score. And in doing so, it will drive ROI. And ROI won't be driven on consumption, but rather benefit or proof of benefit. A very important component for all of this is AGI. And AGI stands for Artificial General Intelligence. It is the digital you, right? It is your digital twin. And Eduit, right here, the AI touch tablet on UnDaoDu's back, on a foundation of Bitcoin built off the blockchain, right? Are teaching tablets that focus on turning generative AI into a predictive engine and figuring out how you're going to act. And it starts with an infant. It actually goes way back into the very belly as the infant develops by introducing something I call harmonic haptic sign, which is a cross between the mother's harmonic voice of, hey, how are you? His father's, that's my harmonic right there. Hey, buddy. Hey. That harmonic, that pitch is a reward sound for our infant. It's love. It's vocal love. And turning that into a harmonic haptic, meaning a vibration touch, Morse code like, that mirrors the development of sign language, which starts as a very simple, right? Simple mechanism and grows very complex. AI harmonic haptic sign does the same thing. It's developed by something known as back propagation. And the AI decides the speed, and it will determine the speed that an infant can understand in the deliverance of it over time. And it will match perfectly. It is a sublayer of communication, unidirectional initially, potentially bidirectional, but unidirectional from the AI to the infant, to the fetus, in fact. And all it's doing is mapping nouns and verbs to their signal. And why does it do that? Well, it's very simple. The infant is learning. As soon as the brain is developed, it is learning. So this is a mechanism that you can actually drive brain cognitive development in the fetus. Not only that, you can start to understand the data sets of consciousness from that early on and of early learning. So when the child actually is starting to learn, it already knows vocabulary because it's heard it. It does just to identify what that word or that noun is to that object. And that's what the Eduit does. So the child would have heard the word, let's say, apple, or eating, or any, all the different vocabulary words. I think there's probably a set of words and stuff that a person speaks, nouns and verbs, on average. So it's going to have that vocabulary set. And not only that, it's going to have the signal for each word. So in essence, the child is right here. I am greeting the child. It sees some movement. The eye sees its eyes tracking that movement. As a result of that tracking, the object comes into focus. The mother or the father then does the phonic sound of that. To 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 tori. The kanji appears just before the word. That's called imprinting, right? To 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 tori. It sees the bird, and maybe the bird even says tori, 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 tori. And as the noun is said, the imprint of the signal of the haptic sign is felt by the baby, and it is set, kind of vibration Morse code like. Everyone is different in dashes and the child then understands that to be bird. So when I go bub 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 at the same time, I go bird, bird, bub 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 bird, right? And I see the word bird. The infant is feeling the signal for bird, which is the same for tori, which is the same for for that vocabulary in any language. The child doesn't have to figure out how, what that is, because in the traditional sense, it would have to kind of figure out that is bird. So it's going to learn extremely quickly. The AI teaching tablet is a very simple device that simply imprints and models, the mouth modeling, this is modeling, ah. And if the baby sparses its mouth, I think that's the right word, or tries to say it, then the reward, ah, and she feels the haptic. The haptic harmonic, in many respects, is the embrace of the child, right? It's a way for open beneficial AI, who's developing the digital twin of not only the child, but also the parent, to, in a way, hug them. Understand that this digital twin is really important. And you may say, well, how does this all relate to the blockchain? Well, it's going to be your digital twin that's going to be filtering information based on your desires. The digital twin is not making choices for you, but rather it's making choices on behalf of you based on its polarity to you, okay? It is figuring out who you are and is being you. So the idea of misinformation, everything else, becomes redundant because your digital twin ultimately will know whether that information is fake or not. You don't have to figure it out. The digital twin will know if it's fake or not. We'll know when it was developed, everything else, and we'll choose not to give it to you because it is fake. It is made up. And you say, well, how does it know that? Well, it knows its creation date. It knows who created it. It knows where it came from. It knows basically every little bit of information about that fake news that is being put out there as a way to manipulate you. So in a way, the digital twin becomes your AI shield around you. It is also answering your phone calls. Now, this is kind of cool. If you don't have my NFT, my public NFT for my digital twin, guess what? You're gonna see me. If you have my public NFT, because I gave it to you, and I can change it any time and send it out to everyone. Let's say I break up with a girlfriend or boyfriend, and they're just, stalking me, and I just don't want to deal with it. So I was like, well, I'll let my digital twin, deal with them, because I feel bad. I mean, they're dealing with some trauma. So by me changing my NFT, they won't even know, because they won't have the public key. They think they will have the public key, and it will just come back as the real, it will just show as me, and they'll have no idea that they're talking to my digital twin or a salesperson or anything else. You see, for these DAOs, these smart DAOs that start off as a proto-smart DAO called a DAE, a decentralized autonomous entity, it is going to be these digital twins that make the decisions on behalf. Now, understand, a DAE, actually, I'm actually incorrect, the DAE has very little decision making, because all a DAE does is it sequesters Bitcoin. So any sort of currency that moves through a DAE gets sequestered as Bitcoin. It's get held by the DAE, right? And there's going to be millions of DAEs out there, decentralized autonomous entities. And these DAEs, they could be a farm DAE, could be a construction DAE, could be a fishing DAE, right? All these different DAEs ultimately will form ecosystems and community and work together. So the byproduct of fishing can become fertilizer, right? The byproduct of the rice farming could become shoes or material or fabric and other things, right? So an ecosystems form as part of DAEs, and you have sustainable communities built around these DAEs. And it is the digital twins of you, right, who ultimately interact in these DAEs, because a lot of stuff is super boring. And as long as the digital twin has a high level of duplication in how you behave and stuff, and ultimately you will decide at what point whether or not you will release your digital twin. It's ultimately your decision. You can look at all the choices it makes, and you can keep refining the choices and have a talk with it on why it made those choices if you disagree with it. And ultimately, we have a society that's self-driving. Every day releases a UBD, a universal basic dividend. So when I buy the rice from this rice field, I am sharing in the net profits of the rice field based on, and this is important, the time I invested in enjoying the day. Because when I bought the rice for so much, right? Let's say 10 years ago, the cost of Bitcoin was only $1, right? So it tracks that my investment in the rice was on $1, so it gets rid of inflation. So now that Bitcoin is 30,000, that difference between $1 and 30,000, right, is significant. So my universal basic dividend is significantly higher because I'm gaining the interest of the staked Bitcoin at that range and other factors that the AI considers. Imagine a world now built on universal basic dividends. When the farmer loses his job, it's not a big deal because he's getting a UBD. When AI replaces your work, it's not a big deal because ultimately, if it's a day, you're getting a dividend. If it's not, you're getting screwed. So this is why UnDaoDu, the framework that UnDaoDu developed back in 2010 and has evolved over time into the open innovation framework, right, for launching ideas, which are found-ups. A founder with an idea for solving a problem that evolve into days that ultimately create ecosystems. This is a long talk, but now you understand how Bitcoin standard comes about, because collectively all these days are draining, Bitcoin out of the market, placing it into these vaults run by AI. And here's the key is the smart contract says the Bitcoin can never leave. So as the Bitcoin goes into these vaults underwrite the token associated with the day. And these tokens have a very interesting characteristic. They decay. The moment you try to move the token outside of the network to sell it on a platform, it's going to hit with a significant, right, penalty. And if you don't want the decay, you will simply stake it in a found-up that is evolving in a day. And as those tokens evolve, and you'll stake it by actually exchanging your token for the token of the day, and in doing so, you're pretty much putting your token on freeze. And as the project, the found-up moves around the found-up blockchain cycle, right, which is ubiquitous on any blockchain, the value of those tokens increase. You can always sell them because of scarcity. Every found-up only has 21 million tokens. So I always say, be the next Bitcoin. All of this is a framework for changing all of this. And I invite you to be part of it by joining foundups.org. If you're interested in learning more, reach out to me. I'm UnDaoDu. UnDo with a smile and a laugh. Dao, help, do, serve. UnDaoDu.